This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Selling a little or a lot? Do your thing however you cha-ching with Shopify, the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. Get a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/offer23.
Bienvenidas al podcast Dos Bold Latinas. Aquí están sus hosts, Jatna Abreu
y Josibel Madera Vialet, dos latinas feministas born in Santo Domingo y en New York.
Passionate about Latina empowerment, Spanglish,
learning, growth, and so much more.
Hola, mujeres. Today, we want to quickly have a conversation about the importance of measuring your own progress and not comparing ourselves to other women's or other people's progress and where they are in their journey of life versus where we are. Theodore Roosevelt said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." It literally steals us away from satisfaction with our own life, providing us with a yardstick on the things we see as desirable. So the process of constantly evaluating our own behaviors, our thoughts, our emotions, relationships, jobs, houses, clothes, looks, our lives to each other is one of the most damaging internal narratives we can have. It can make us miserable as we assess our own situations in comparison to the world of others. So, this doesn't mean that we have never done this. Of course, we have. And this is the reason why Rosie and I are here to share today and just talk about why we never want to go back to comparing ourselves to other women. We have both, at some point in our lives, felt victims of comparison, and we want to share our experiences. So let's start with Rosie. Rosie, tell us a little bit about your experience with comparison and how you have gotten to a point where that is no longer important to you and how you've been focusing about yourself and your own progress.
Thank you, Jatna, y hola, mujeres. Hola a todos. Bueno, I'll be honest, I still do compare myself a bit. However, it wasn't until approximately 5 years ago, that's when I actually understood the power of that I am my own competition. Like, I never understood that. Like, it was very competitive mindset, right? Comparing myself to others. But I used to honestly beat up myself for not performing at the level of other colleagues, which have been doing the job for a lot more time than I was. For some reason, I wanted to be doing what they were doing. And like, let's say it took them 5 years, I wanted to do it 1 year because I'm like, I have to be at that level. So I would really beat myself up for that. And that's when I realized I just need to be better than I was yesterday in my career. And that's when I actually stopped wasting time and energy with all these comparisons. I started to focus on myself, which has led into embracing who I am. Like, you guys probably hear that I use the word embrace, or that we don't, like, oh, embrace who you are, because that was like the light bulb moment for me. But of course, there are still times I still compare myself. However, what I do is like, okay, what can I learn from that I'm comparing myself to that person? Or how can I get inspired to learn a new skill to who I am right now, right? So it's like, turn it into a positive thing. And you guys probably like, oh, here comes Rosie, talk about her marriage. I would say mine dysfunctional, but I have come to realize that it's not because of this. And it was because I would compare it a lot. Like, as you guys have heard, I thought I was supposed to have a movie style marriage, which is not realistic. But when it comes to my marriage, I honestly did mess up so bad in terms of seeing what other couples posted on social media or acting like in public. So I would go and nag to my husband about that. And, I'm using the word nag because I've been seeing that word a lot, like, oh, complain and point fingers. And it's like, that's a big no-no. And it was be like, oh, why aren't you this way? Or why aren't we that way? And it actually started decreasing when I learned that not all that we see in public of a relationship is what keeps them truly happy. Like we only see a small size, but to me it was like, oh, that's everything. But it's not. So as the years went by, I would hear stories of couples I believe were happy, and in reality they were not, or had a lot more problems than I did in my marriage. So with that said, I am still working on not comparing my marriage, since I tend to live in this fairy tale mindset when it comes to marriage. Therefore, I still do get triggered a lot. So what do I do is that's when I actually need to pause and reflect on the positives of my marriage and see my husband in those positive lens, that positive mindset, reminding myself that every marriage is unique, and um, we all of us have our own flaws, right? So with then I don't know. I was debating I should talk about this, like, oh, and how do I compare myself as a mom? Because I'm like, that's a whole nother topic. But just short and quick, yes, I do go into the whole negative self-talk, and I feel like that's what the whole comparison thing comes into, when you start having those negative self-talks in your head. But a way for me to get out of my head is I start asking my children, like, hey, what do you think of me as your mommy? And it's like when they tell me how they view me instead of how I'm viewing myself in my head, that's when I'm like, okay, don't compare yourself. You're like, oh, that's how they see me. I'm like, oh, I am a good mom. So just by doing that and saying, that's just like when I say, okay, don't worry about it. You're doing great. And that's how I just say, okay, don't worry about what you saw on social media. Don't worry about what you didn't do with your kids. Just worry about what you're doing, because that's who they see you as that mommy. So that helps me stay grateful and focused on myself and my children. So para no cansarlas, here's another aspect of like comparisons. You're like, whoa, this girl's comparing herself everywhere. But I just feel like it's like normal for us to do it. Again, like I'm sharing all of this because it's like we need to learn how to compare ourselves in a healthy way. And this is really when things started coming together for me. And it was during my self-love process, which has helped me tremendously to stop comparing myself to others. It's helping me be happier with what I have and who I am. Again, I'm still working on getting out of my head and just doing it, or saying not to worry how I may not be as good as others. So it's like when I'm saying just doing it, it's like sometimes even with like just recording this podcast, I'm like, what are people gonna my episode, like what my content's on that be at others? And it's like, you know what, José, like you're interesting. It's like when we watch reality shows on YouTube, we're like, why are we watching this? And it's like, I could be a YouTuber, but again, it's like start doing something with your life and you're also interesting. It's like that's how the mindset I'm coming into also. It's like just do it. Don't worry if someone else has a better Instagram post than you have, or designs better. Just do it, because that's how you're gonna achieve what you want. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Jatna, and after that, we'll give some tips for you.
Yes. So thanks, Rosy, because I know that it's kind of hard for us to talk about, like, again, we created this podcast, and you guys have heard this so many, 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 many times, that the podcast was created for us specifically to share experiences, personal experiences with you on like our journey and what, the things we've gone through. And hopefully help you have a better understanding on how to do those things on your journey, or how to maybe avoid certain things, right, in your journey by learning from us. So, this is, Rosy sharing this stuff and me sharing this stuff is like, just we're being humble, right? And we're just sharing like our personal lives and things with you guys, so that in hopes that we can, empower you to be able to do so with other women, but also like to help you, succeed in your own journey. So my experience with comparison, I would say, is a little different, a little weird, I would say, because when I was in my 20s, I wouldn't really compare myself to people my age per se. Like you would think that you would compare yourself with people that are doing things similar, your own age, that are doing things maybe similar to you. But for me, it was different. For me, I pretty much looked at what older people have accomplished at their age. And then I will say, I hope that by that age, I have accomplished as many things as that person has accomplished, not really thinking about, how long it took them to get there and the amount of work it probably required them. And then many other factors that we don't always think about, right? So I would have been maybe like 25, and then someone that would have been like, I don't know, in their 30s or whatever, was very successful. And, especially women, right? Like I would look up to women and see them doing so many successful things, like as mothers, as like business owners, or as like in the corporate world, and doing all these things that I would always like compare myself, saying like, oh, when I'm 30 years old, like I'm as successful as she is. Like I'm doing the things that she's doing. So, it was kind of hard, for me to like stay within my age category to say like, I've accomplished this many things in life already for a 25-year-old. Like I never really looked at it that way. Like I never really looked at the progress of my, my own progress. Like I always looked further ahead. Like I want to be doing this by this age and things like that. So, it's not healthy. I mean, sometimes it's helpful, right? Because you want to think about your future and the things you want to do, but but not all the times in the sense that like you're comparing yourself to someone that has already probably gone through a lot to get to where they are. So now that I am in my 30s and have had my own journey of going through difficulties and hard work, I now know that, whoa, it is a lot harder than it seems. We really don't know all the sacrifices someone might have to make or had to go through to be where they are today, right? And yet sometimes you just see the end result and automatically start to, the comparison process. And honestly, even if it was easy for that person, which I doubt, to get to where they are and have the things they have, great, that's great for them. But we really need to focus on ourselves so that we are not miserable with our own lives. Just like, that little saying that I said earlier with Theodore Roosevelt, like we don't want to be miserable in our own lives. We just want to make sure that we are, our own competition is us, and we're measuring progress against ourselves, not other people. So this is where we need to stop ourselves and think about where you have been and where you are today, and thinking about your progress and what you have done to get to where you actually are and what you actually have today. So with that, like Rosie mentioned earlier, we have some tips that we want to share with you so that it can hopefully help you stop comparing yourself to others and just, again, help you focus on your own journey. And so we have collected these tips from various sources, obviously, and also our own experiences and what we've done so far to, keep that comparison away from us. And we want to share those with you. So the first one is be aware of your triggers and avoid them. And when we say avoid your triggers or be aware of them, we mean that if you know that a specific person or a specific activity or a specific thing makes you engage in comparison, just try to limit those things, or, that being around that person, or just avoid everything altogether. So if you know yourself and you know that that's something, you're going to engage in something that is going to remind you of, like, it's going to actually have you compare yourself to someone else, then just try to avoid that. Try to stay away from those things. And if you are going to maybe start thinking about it that way, where you are comparing yourself, I would do it, as Rosie mentioned earlier, like the healthy way, not the like being envious way. Like, oh, so and so is doing this. Like, I also want to put in the effort to get, to do this and things like that. Not so much in like jealousy, right? Or like, I want to have this and all these things. Like, you do have to work really hard on those things.
And avoiding self-sabotage also.
Exactly.
And that goes into, limit your time on social media. Because over scrolling on social media, especially when consuming lifestyle and beauty content, it really does have a negative effect on our self-worth. Like that's when it really comes down to, you have to either really take control of your triggers or start to unfollow accounts that cause you to compare yourself to others. So ask yourself if you could spend more time on social media more constructively instead, like more inspirational and more something that aligns with the goal that you have, something that actually fuels your soul, flourishes you to be that best version of yourself. And then, another thing that you can start doing is, could you read a book? Can you go for a walk? Can you call a friend? So because sometimes we use that whole social media, like to decompose, like I don't really use social media. And sometimes I'm like, at nighttime, I'm like, oh, I haven't used social media. Or if I just want to take a break from my kids, like, okay, I'm going to sit in my car. I'm just going to scroll on social media. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do this for too long, because then the triggers start coming in. So that's when you really have to either learn to keep those triggers controlled, like you said, like keep your enemies close to you, so you really identify those triggers, or to just start unfollowing.
And then the other tip is to use your past self as a benchmark for, of comparison. So like we kind of said earlier, the only real competition you have is who you were yesterday, who you were last month, or even who you were last year. So you'll be able to see real growth through retrospection and be proud of your growth. So instead of like looking at so-and-so and what they're doing and where they are today, just look at your own journey. And I can guarantee you that today you're doing a lot better than what you were doing last year. You probably have grown a lot more and have, things have changed for you in a good way. So just look at your progress and compare yourself to who you were last year or a couple of weeks ago, or things like that. So that's what's going to help you stay away from like just thinking about other people's life and what they're doing and comparing it to yours, more like thinking about yourself and where you've been in your progress so far.
Yes. I'll give an example of that. The other day, John, I'm guilty of, I started scrolling on our Instagram page because I'm like, I don't know what to post. I'm not good at this. And I'm like, oh, look at everything we posted. Look at everything we have accomplished. So because that comes into like, oh my gosh, like there's so many other Instagram pages out there. And I would start comparing myself. And then I'm like, I look back and like, look at all the great things we have done. So we are good. We just have to keep going. So just giving a little example out there. And another tip is to count your blessings. Yes, like be grateful for what you have. Someone's life may seem better, but there might be another person out there wishing they had what you had. There's always something, even just one thing for you, which you can be thankful for. So that's when it comes into practicing gratitude. When you're journaling or having a gratitude journal or writing down 10 things a day that you're grateful for, is really going to help you stay focused on yourself to count those blessings. So if there's a trigger that comes in, think about those blessings that you have instead.
And then the last tip we have for you is, as usual, and this actually comes from our dear Rosie here, because she's all self-love.
I can never leave that out.
You're going to see how this is like a trend for us, right? Like the whole self-care, self-love, and all these things. But the last thing is, again, self-love. So when we start loving ourselves and, and our partner, our children, our family, most likely we will obviously kind of like stop comparing ourselves also, just because we have somewhere to put that energy to, and other people that actually, we're responsible for and we have to care for, and they actually, those are the people that love us the most, let's be honest, right? So with that, start watering your own grass and to love who you are and your partner and your children and your family. And that's going to make you feel a lot better in your journey and where you are today, as opposed to, you yourself comparing yourself to other people.
Yes. At the end of the day, I just feel like we're all just so united by love. I mean, by the love of God, and then everything in there else starts building up from there. So we're gonna close it out here, and that take out your notepad, or you gotta pause so you can take notes, or take notes on your phone. But again, we want you guys to really take into action what you listen to, like to take this as a reflection upon yourself. So, because after hearing these tips, you may still be thinking, I can't stop comparing myself. And that's okay. We want you guys to realize that it's okay to still do it, however, in a healthy way. So with that said, we challenge you to think of 3 positive things you already have in that one area you may be thinking negative of yourself when in comparison. You got that, okay? So if something you're comparing yourself to something, or saying I don't have that, or anything, any aspect of your life, just write down 3 positive things that you already have, or similar, focus. That's going to bring you back to focus on yourself, and it all correlates to those tips that we were giving. And another challenge for you is to think of something you may be a bit jelly of, like a bit jealous. Like, that's okay. Some people, that's just how they are. Like, we're humans, right? However, that's when we really now need to turn that into an inspiration. Start developing a strategy with realistic goals. So if you see something that you're like, oh my gosh, I want that, or why don't I have that? Then start thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to have that? And start setting realistic goals. Again, tying it back to thinking of 3 positive things, because the issue with comparison is that we have is not taking healthy actions when we compare ourselves. So as they say, don't compare apples to oranges. So mujer, love yourself, your life. God made you unique with your own journey. So embrace it, porque todo tiene su tiempo. So muchas gracias, las queremos. Hasta la próxima. Chao.